These figures need to be verified before the meeting.
I'll cross-check them right away.
I'm sorry, but there's been an issue with the room. You need to see this.
I ever got used to. She always felt it didn't belong to her world. Those crisp, powerful footsteps, that sense of ownership in every stride. She moved quietly, her mop gliding across the floor in soft arcs, her worn shoes pressing hushfully against the polished hallways that reflected a life she had never been allowed to imagine for herself. But that morning, the air in the building felt different charged, tight, almost trembling with something unseen. The employees rushed around with tight jaws and wide eyes. Whispers gathered like storm clouds above every cubicle. He's furious. He's about to sign something huge. It could change everything. And then Maria heard it, his voice. Leonard Greystone, the youngest self-made millionaire in the city. A man whose empire spanned hotels, shipping, energy, tech, everything Maria's world had no doorway into. His voice wasn't loud. It was worse controlled, clipped, the tone one uses when standing at the edge of a cliff. Maria instinctively paused, wringing out the mop and leaning ever so slightly toward the open boardroom door. She wasn't eavesdropping on purpose. She never did. But when you're invisible to the world, when your uniform makes you part of the walls, you hear things. You notice things. And sometimes, like today, something inside you tells you to listen. Inside the room stood a large, imposing table covered with documents. Leonard hovered over a thick folder marked Confidential Merger Agreement. Several suited executives surrounded him like satellites, each wearing the same rehearsed confidence. "This is the deal of the decade, sir," one of them said. "You sign today, and we secure the entire West Coast market," another added, but there was something in their eyes, a flicker Maria recognized from people who tried to cheat her neighbor out of her home years ago. A kind of too smooth persuasion. A glaze of greed over desperation. Maria didn't know finance. She didn't know mergers or markets or billion-dollar decisions. But she knew people. She cleaned around them, behind them, unnoticed by them, long enough to understand tones, glances, micro-smiles that never reached the eyes. And then she saw it. One piece of paper near the edge of the folder, different font, different spacing, wrong header. Almost invisible unless someone was really looking. Leonard wasn't looking. Everyone else knew he wasn't. Her heart thudded in her ribs. Her voice trembled out of her before she could swallow it back. "Sir, this is wrong." The room froze. The executives snapped their heads toward her as if a broom had suddenly grown a voice. Their eyes cut into her sharp, belittling, incredulous. Leonard looked up slowly, his expression unreadable, the pen still in his hand. Maria felt her face heat. She shouldn't have spoken. She had broken the one rule of being poor in a rich man's world. Stay silent, stay small. But the words were already out, and they were about to change everything. For a long moment, Maria wished the ground would open and swallow her whole. The boardroom seemed to tighten around her, every pair of eyes slicing into her like she had trespassed in a sacred place. She could almost hear her mother's voice, from childhood, whispering, "People like us don't interfere in matters of the powerful. We survive by staying quiet." But Leonard Greystone didn't shout. He didn't dismiss her. He simply stared at first with surprise, then with something more complex, something strangely human. "What did you say?" he asked, not unkindly. Maria swallowed. I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have interrupted, but that paper at the edge, it looks different from the rest, like someone added it." She instantly regretted the words. Perhaps she was wrong. Perhaps she'd just jeopardized her job because her instincts had spoken louder than her fear. The executives exchanged quiet, burning glances. One of them cleared his throat sharply. "She's confused. Let's continue." But Leonard lifted a hand, silencing him. He stepped closer to the contract, eyes narrowing as he scanned the page she had pointed toward. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His silence made the executives shift uncomfortably. Maria's pulse hammered. If she was wrong, she was done. If she was right, she didn't even know what being right would mean. Perhaps nothing. People like her didn't get rewarded, just tolerated until they made a mistake. But before any conclusion could form, chaos erupted outside the room, phones ringing nonstop, urgent footsteps echoing down the hall. Something was happening. Something large. A young assistant rushed into the doorway. "Mr. Greystone, sir, urgent call from the bank. They say it can't wait." Leonard gave Maria one last glance, one that held a question, maybe curiosity, or perhaps disbelief that a cleaning lady had dared to intervene. Then he strode out, the assistant trailing behind him. The executives followed in a tight cluster, whispering in hushed, bitter tones. Maria remained there alone, feeling foolish, exposed. She let out a long breath and returned to her mop. Her hands trembled as she gripped the handle. She had worked this job only 6 months, yet every paycheck meant survival. Rent, medicine for her father, school supplies for her younger sister. One wrong move could unravel everything. She cleaned quietly, her movements mechanical, trying to steady her thoughts. Maybe they wouldn't fire her. Maybe Leonard wouldn't even remember what she'd said. After all, she was invisible again, now just a shadow blending back into the background. As she wiped the last streak on the boardroom table, she heard her own breath hitch. Why did I open my mouth? Why did I meddle? She shook her head, forcing herself to focus. She couldn't afford to dwell. Not when 2 more floors waited to be cleaned before noon. But the truth was this: Maria did not fully understand what she had just prevented, or how close the company had been to a fatal mistake. And while she returned to sweeping, far away in a glass-walled office, Leonard Greystone was now staring at his laptop with a look of dawning horror, all because of one page she had pointed out. Maria barely had time to gather her cart before the first blow landed. Not a physical one, but the kind that bruises the pride. A kind that reminds a poor woman exactly where she stands in a world built for the wealthy. She stepped out of the boardroom only to be met by Richard Hawley, Leonard's senior executive, a man whose smile was as sharp as the pens clipped to his $1,000 suit. He blocked her path, arms crossed, jaw tight. "So," he said slowly, "you've decided you're qualified to comment on corporate contracts now." Maria froze. "Sir, I didn't mean." "Of course you didn't mean." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "But this is a company, not your little cleaning closet. You don't get to have opinions here." Her fingers tightened around the mop handle. She lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, you should be." His tone carried the sting of humiliation, loud enough for the passing employees to hear, loud enough for Maria to feel her face heat with shame. "Interfering with high-level decisions? If Mr. Greystone fires you, I'll make sure security escorts you out myself." Maria's throat closed. She nodded quietly and moved aside, trying to shrink into the wall as he brushed past her. But the humiliation didn't end there. As she pushed her cart down the hallway, 2 interns whispered loudly, "That's her." The cleaning lady who tried to correct the executives. What was she thinking? She pretended not to hear, but every word pressed deeper. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was fear. Fear that today would be her last day. Fear that her father's medications would run out. Fear that her sister's final year school fees would stay unpaid. Yet even through the humiliation, something inside her whispered that she had done the right thing. She had seen something wrong. She had spoken. That small seed of courage kept her from collapsing under the weight of their disdain. Still, courage did not pay bills. Courage did not protect jobs. She leaned against her cart for a moment, eyes closing as she inhaled deeply. Just get through today. That was all she could tell herself. But her reprieve was short-lived. Within minutes, Richard returned, rage simmering beneath his perfectly controlled posture. "Mr. Greystone wants to see you. Now." Her stomach dropped. She nodded slowly, forcing her trembling feet to follow. They walked through the executive corridor, past glass offices filled with people who didn't even glance at her. She was a shadow again, being marched toward the brightest room in the building, one where shadows didn't belong. When the door opened, Maria saw Leonard standing behind his desk. One hand braced on the wood, his eyes fixed on her, not angry, not dismissive, but intense. On his screen were charts, documents, financial red flags blinking like alarms. "Maria," he said, voice steady, "I need you to tell me exactly what you noticed." Richard's head snapped toward Leonard. "Sir, this is unnecessary." "She doesn't understand." Leonard cut him off sharply. "I'm not asking you." Maria's heart pounded. Her humiliation transformed into something else, fear, mixed with the faintest flicker of significance. She stepped forward, her breath unsteady. "Sir, I noticed the paper wasn't the same as the others. It looked like someone added it at the last minute." Leonard stared at her as if she had just revealed a secret no one else had dared to point out. And then he said words that would begin unraveling everything. "This page? If I had signed it, my company would have lost $500 million. Maria felt the room tilt. The executive stiffened. Richard's face drained of color. Before she could even breathe, Leonard said quietly, "And someone in this building wanted me to miss it." Maria stood frozen, the weight of Leonard's words sinking in slowly, heavily, like stones dropping one by one into a deep well. $500 million? She didn't even know how many zeros that meant. The number was too big, too unreal for someone who counted coins to make bus fare. Yet here she was standing at the center of a disaster she had unknowingly prevented. Leonard leaned back, exhaling sharply. His expression was no longer controlled. It was shaken angry, even. Not at her, but at someone else. Someone powerful. Someone close. He tapped the questionable page. "This clause would have stripped us of our West Coast rights." It was slipped in. This wasn't a mistake. His gaze hardened. This was sabotage. Richard opened his mouth, but Leonard shot him a look so cold he went silent instantly. "Maria," Leonard continued, softer, "how did you see it? How did you notice what everyone else in this room missed?" Her voice was small. "Sir, I just... pay attention. I have to. I've cleaned offices my whole life. I notice things people don't." The silence that followed was thick. Not out of respect, out of unease. Maria could feel the tension knitting itself into the walls. Richard finally stepped forward. "Sir, this is absurd. You're letting a cleaning woman..." "Enough," Leonard snapped. His tone cut the air clean in two. Richard went stiff. His jaw clenched, but his eyes burned with resentment. That was the moment Maria understood something important. She hadn't just embarrassed him. She had exposed something he desperately wished had stayed hidden. And now, Richard wasn't just annoyed. He was threatened. Leonard turned back to her. "Maria, what you said, it may have saved the company." She looked down, twisting her fingers together. "Sir, I wasn't trying to do anything. I'm sorry if I caused trouble." He shook his head. "You didn't cause trouble. You revealed it." But Maria wasn't convinced. As she stepped back, she could feel Richard's glare following her like a warning shadow. She had crossed an invisible line, one that people like her weren't allowed to step near. Leonard dismissed her gently. "You may return to your work. Please don't worry about anything. I'll handle this." When she left the office, her chest felt tight, her mind swirling. She had feared humiliation earlier, Now she feared something more dangerous repercussions. She couldn't foresee Dot as she moved through the hall. She tried to shake the feeling, but whispers ignited behind her like sparks. Did she really stop a $500 million mistake? No way. She must be exaggerating. Or maybe she caused it. The words stung. Rumors always traveled faster than truth. And Maria had no defense, only her mop, her cart, and her thin dignity. Dot. By the time she reached the janitor closet, she shut the door quietly and allowed her trembling hands to rest on the counter. She didn't cry. She wouldn't, but her breath wavered. She thought of her father, coughing at night. She thought of her little sister, studying by candlelight. She couldn't lose this job. Not now. Not ever. But fate had already begun to twist. Leonard wasn't the only one who saw the contract error. Someone else did too. Someone who wanted it hidden. And that someone now knew exactly who had uncovered it. That evening, long after the rest of the employees had left, Maria remained in the building, gathering trash bags and wiping down break rooms. The sun had set hours ago, leaving the city wrapped in shimmering lights and the hallways in quiet shadows. She preferred the night shift, fewer eyes judging her, fewer whispers reminding her she didn't belong. But tonight, even silence felt hostile. Her thoughts looped endlessly. $500 million, sabotage, someone watching. Richard's glare. She pushed her cart toward the top floor when she heard a voice echoing from Leonard's office. Low, agitated. Not Leonard's. She slowed, listened. I don't care what she saw, the voice hissed. We're too close. We're not letting one cleaning woman ruin a year's work. Maria's blood ran cold. She recognized that voice. Richard. He wasn't alone. Another man murmured something she couldn't catch, but Richard's next words were sharp, poisonous. Greystone never pays attention. He signs whatever we put in front of him. He was meant to sign it. Maria's heart pounded. Meant to sign it. This wasn't corporate disagreement. This was betrayal. Planned. Calculated. She tried to step back quietly, but her elbow bumped her cart just slightly, just enough. The wheels squeaked. Silence. Then, footsteps, fast, approaching. Maria froze like prey, sensing the predator too. Late, Richard swung the office door open. His eyes locked onto her, and a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. Well, look who's snooping. Maria shook her head quickly. No, sir, I was just cleaning. You were listening. He stepped closer. You heard enough to make you a problem. Her throat closed. She backed away until her spine hit the wall. I won't say anything, she whispered. Oh, I know you won't, he said softly. Because you won't be working here tomorrow. Her breath hitched. Please. I need this job. Richard leaned in, his voice dropping into a low, venomous tone. You ruined everything. Do you think people like you get to interfere in billion-dollar affairs? You don't belong here. You never did. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't break. Not in front of him. Richard smirked as he walked away, leaving the office open behind him, papers scattered, tension still lingering in the air. Consider tonight your last shift, he said without turning back. The door clicked shut. Maria stood trembling in the empty hall, fired, before Leonard even knew. Before she could explain. Before she could defend herself. She pressed a hand to her mouth to stop the sob threatening to escape. Her chest tightened with the crushing weight of fear and defeat. But then, something shifted. A folder on the floor near the office door caught her eye. It must have fallen during the argument. When she picked it up, her breath stopped. Inside were emails, financial reports, hidden communication threads, documents showing the merger was a trap, one designed specifically to bleed Greystone Industries dry. And Richard was at the center of it. Maria felt her pulse surge. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She was holding proof. Real proof. For the first time that day, courage flickered inside her, again stronger, fiercer. She had been humiliated, threatened, silenced, but fate had placed something in her hands that could destroy the men trying to destroy the company. And she knew exactly who needed to see it. Maria clutched the folder to her chest, like a lifeline, as she hurried toward the service elevator. Every shadow in the hallway felt alive, every hum of the fluorescent lights sharper than usual. She wasn't supposed to be here, not on this floor, not at this hour, not holding documents that could shatter powerful careers. Her heart wouldn't slow. Each beat felt like a warning. Run, hide, think, but she couldn't think not clearly. All she knew was that Leonard needed to see the truth before Richard found her first dot. As she reached the elevator, her trembling finger pressed the button, and the doors slid open to reveal the last face. She wanted to see Richard. He stood inside the elevator, hands in his pockets, eyes cold with certainty. As though he had been expecting her, Maria froze. Her grip tightened around the folder. He noticed. His smile was small and terrifyingly calm. "You really don't know your place, do you?" She stepped back, pulse thundering. I didn't take anything, sir. I'm just leaving." "Leaving," he echoed softly, stepping out of the elevator. "Yes, that's exactly what you'll be doing. Security will escort you out, and by morning, you'll be permanently blacklisted from every company connected to us." It wasn't just losing her job. He wanted to ruin her life, erase her future, make her regret ever opening her mouth. Maria swallowed hard. "What you're doing is wrong." Richard's eyes narrowed, his mask slipping just enough to reveal the fury beneath. "What I'm doing," he hissed, "is making sure people who matter stay in power, and people like you stay where they belong, cleaning up after us." His hand reached out, not to hit her. He didn't need violence. He simply wanted the folder, quietly, efficiently, like removing a stain. But Maria stepped back. "You can't have this." Something broke in Richard's expression. Just for a moment. A crack in his controlled veneer. "Give it to me, Maria," he said quietly. "You don't understand what you're holding." But she did. For the first time, she truly did. "It's the truth," she whispered. Richard's jaw tightened. "It's business. It's theft. It's survival." "No," she said, her voice steadying, surprising even herself. "It's betrayal." He lunged. Not violently, just fast enough to scare her. Fast enough to remind her how powerless she was. Maria darted sideways, heart hammering, and pushed herself through the stairwell door. She ran down the steps, clutching the folder like her life depended on it. In a way, it did. Richard's footsteps thundered behind her. He wasn't giving up. Not now. Not when everything he'd been planning was crumbling. Because of one cleaning woman who saw what she wasn't supposed to see. As she descended another flight, she pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She didn't call security. She didn't call HR. She called the only person who would listen, Leonard. Her breath came in gasps. "Sir, please. I need to talk to you. Now, it's about the merger. It's about Richard. I have proof." Before she could finish, the stairwell door above slammed open. Richard's voice boomed. "Maria!" Her blood turned to ice. Leonard's voice crackled through the phone, sharp with concern. "Maria, what's happening? Where are you?" She clutched the folder tighter and whispered, "Sir, he's coming." Maria burst through the first-floor exit door just as Richard's footsteps closed in behind her. The night air hit her like a slap, cold, sharp, full of sirens in the distance, and the faint city hum. She stumbled onto the pavement, gripping the folder so tight her knuckles burned. Her breath steamed in the air as she spun around. "Richard, was already charging down the stairs toward her. He wasn't hiding his fury anymore. He wasn't pretending. He was done playing games. "Stop!" He barked, but Maria ran. Her legs, tired from a long day of work, still found strength she didn't know she had. She sprinted across the dimly lit parking lot, her shoes slipping on the oil-streaked pavement. Behind her, Richard's steps were heavy, fast, determined. Then headlights. Bright beams swept across the lot as a black SUV screeched to a stop in front of her. The door flew open. "Maria!" Leonard's voice. He jumped out of the vehicle, rushing toward her. She wasn't sure how he had found her this fast, until she realized he must have tracked her phone's GPS after she called him. Maria collapsed into him, breathless. "Sir, I have the proof." He tried to stop me. Leonard steadied her, one arm around her shoulder as he took the folder. His eyes scanned the documents too quickly for her to understand how he even processed what he was seeing. But she recognized the shift in his face. Shock, then anger, then betrayal. Richard stopped several feet away, panting, but his expression smoothed, transforming into his usual corporate mask, calm, professional, deceitful. "Leonard," he said with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "This is a misunderstanding. The girl broke into my office." Leonard raised a hand. The gesture silenced the night. "Don't," he said. "Not another lie." Richard opened his mouth, but Leonard stepped forward, voice rising not in volume, but in finality. "You forged documents. You coordinated with outside partners to siphon company assets. You hid communications. And you tried to manipulate me into signing away the company my father built." His voice cracked just slightly. Enough for Maria to understand that this wasn't just business. This was personal. You would have destroyed everything. Richard's mask shattered. You were too blind to see what the company needed. You cling to old ways. You call it loyalty. I call it weakness. Leonard's expression hardened into something Maria had never seen before: quiet power. "It's over." Security guards, summoned silently the moment Leonard arrived, closed in. Richard struggled, shouting accusations, half-truths, venom, but the moment had passed. His power was gone. His plan unraveled. And the woman he underestimated stood behind the man who finally saw the truth. As Richard was escorted away, the parking lot fell quiet again. Maria's legs gave out, and she sank onto the curb. Leonard crouched beside her. "You saved this company," he said softly. "You saved me." Maria shook her head, tears slipping free now. "I just noticed something." "Anyone would have." "No," he interrupted gently. "Not anyone. You." He took a slow breath, the weight of the night settling around them. "You saw what none of us did, because you pay attention, because you don't overlook what matters, because you care even when you have nothing to gain." She looked away, embarrassed. "Sir, I'm just a cleaning lady." He paused, then said words she would remember for the rest of her life. "Maria, you're not just anything." The next morning, the company buzzed with scandal and shock. Richard's arrest made headlines. The merger was halted. Investigations began, and in the middle of it all, Leonard called Maria into his office, this time not to question her, not to reprimand her, but to change her life. He offered her a full-time administrative position, training, tuition for evening classes, full benefits for her and her family. A future. Maria broke down crying, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that, for the first time in her life, someone powerful saw her worth. Leonard handed her a pen. "This time," he said with a small smile, "you sign something that changes your life." She signed with trembling hands. And as she stepped out of the office, the employees who once whispered now looked at her with awe. respect, gratitude. She had been invisible, overlooked, humiliated, threatened. But she had saved a fortune, saved a company, saved a man from betrayal. All because she listened to the small voice inside her that said, "This is wrong." And in doing so, she rewrote her own story forever.